Military technology hasn't always been as advanced as the fighter jets, tanks, and drones we see in the news today, especially when it comes to quick response to a terror attack such as 9/11. Improvisation and adaptation are what make modern-day special forces some of the most formidable humans on the planet, and the Green Berets are among the top of the list. An incredibly rapid response to counter the Taliban after 9/11 saw the Green Berets use more traditional methods of Afghani warfare. Let's see how Task Force Dagger got their name as the Horse Soldiers. Prior to the 9/11 attack, U.S. forces hadn't fought on horseback since January 16, 1942, when the 26th Cavalry Regiment retaliated against the 14th Japanese Army in Manila during World War II. This changed a few decades ago in response to the Taliban and their attack on the World Trade Center. The United States had demanded the Taliban, the recognized government of Afghanistan at the time, to extradite their leader Osama bin Laden. Upon refusal, the U.S. sent military forces in to retaliate. On the 7th of October 2001, official combat operations had started. Tomahawk missiles were launched at suspected al-Qaeda sites, but there were very few forces on the ground. This is where then Captain Mark Nooch and his team come in. Nooch was a member of the Operation Detachment Alpha 595 of the Special Forces. He and 11 other Green Berets were scheduled to be one of the 3 teams inserted into Afghanistan to combat the Taliban. The Green Berets are specialized to train and lead unconventional warfare forces, and this is certainly the case with their deployment in Afghanistan at this time. They were tasked with meeting a local warlord, General Abdul Rashid Dostum. Working with him, they would perform various unconventional operations to render the local area unsuitable for Taliban activity. As such a rapid response force, the now-known Task Force Dagger entered the country without the support of vehicles such as tanks and trucks. They had to adapt to the ways of the local forces that they were combining with, and in this scenario, it involved using horses as their main mode of transport. Nooch grew up on a ranch in Kansas, so was quite at home on horseback. This couldn't be said for the entire team, as this was some of the men's first time on a horse. Lieutenant Colonel Max Bowers said it was like riding a bobcat. At one point, Sergeant First Class Joe Young, the team's medic and sniper, was thrown from his horse. He broke his back, but was quoted as saying, "I would not allow myself to be the weak link. It's not in my nature, and it's not in any Green Beret's nature," and he continued the mission. Charging into battles, it was much like the wars of centuries ago, except the AK-47s strapped on their backs instead of swords and spears. And the horses did charge into battle. The Northern Alliance had trained the horses to run towards gunfire and be undeterred by their riders firing weapons from their backs. The commandos would target Taliban fortifications using the horses to move swiftly over the rugged terrain. They would collect intelligence and report their findings. Then Air Force Combat Controller Bart Decker would call in laser-guided airstrikes by B-52 bombers and other support aircraft. Dostum, the alliance leader, was known to call the female operator of the AC-130 gunship the Angel of Death due to her effectiveness in the airstrikes she provided. On November 4, 2001, the first major operation was conducted. Having met up with Dostum 2 days prior, the Green Berets were still fresh on horseback, but they needed to put their beastly friends to use. The mission was to retake the city of Mazar-e-Sharif, which had been under Taliban control since 1988. Dostum had already used his horse-mounted troops to seize Kashinda, a village just outside the target. The Green Berets joined up and began to target the main city. Using the horses' mobility to their advantage, the so-called horse riders charged the Taliban positions, firing at the enemy from horseback. Reports even suggest horses charging at tanks, completely unfazed by the war zone they were immersed in. The combination of cavalry and modern weaponry made for highly effective hit-and-run strategies, which were effective against the Taliban positions. However, the main firepower came from the supportive airstrikes. A group of horse soldiers had overtaken the village of Agkupruk, which is directly south from the main city of Mazar-e-Sharif. They directed bombings from behind Taliban lines, north to the target city. 4,000 Taliban fighters were seen moving to Mazar-e-Sharif in preparation for the battle, but the horse soldiers were too quick. B-52 bombers struck a gorge which marked the only Taliban-controlled entrance to the city, up from the south, taking out a majority of the force. The Taliban reported moving 500 soldiers into the city despite this attack, but the horse soldiers were persistent. On November 9th, the Green Berets concealed themselves in mountainside hides and called in airstrikes on Tenji Pass, the gateway from the Balkh Valley to the city where the U.S. and Northern Alliance agreed to attack. The Taliban responded with indirect fire from BM-21 Grad rockets, but to no avail. Upon a signal from the Green Berets, Dostum moved his men down on foot, in pickup trucks and stolen personnel carriers, and of course, on horseback. Despite having flatbed trucks fitted with Zu-23-2 anti-aircraft guns modified for ground combat, the Taliban feared the assault too much, particularly after outlying villages were taken out by precision airstrikes. As well as this, Young, the aforementioned medic, treated Taliban fighters during the battle. The special forces let one go, allowing him to tell other Taliban fighters he was treated humanely and they would be too. This led to mass surrender after the battle. 5,000 to 12,000 Taliban reportedly retreated into Kunduz, and the horse soldiers were victorious. It was estimated that 400 to 600 people died in the battle, and 1,500 Taliban were captured or defected. Thanks for watching the story of the horse soldiers. Sergeant Rooster, over and out.